Good morning. It's another glorious morning here at Whipsnade Farm. That is, if you guys know C.S. Lewis, you'll understand what Whipsnade means. My wife and I have a homestead out in Jessamine County. And we have some donkeys, some cows, some chickens. And it's just a glorious sight to wake up to every morning. We have coffee out overlooking the land. It's amazing. So, actually a rabbit just ran right in front of my path right there as I'm leaving. Wild rabbit. I'm rabbit hunting. Little throwback to Looney Tunes there. Anyway, this is Wes Mullins with Unabashedly Resolute. And I'm coming to you this morning to talk about something pretty important. This is more of the daily musings. Apologize for clearing my throat. Might be a bit of that this morning. The sinuses and allergies are always fun in the mornings. But I have a topic that I think is really worth discussing. So as we drive into town here, this is my 20 or 30 minutes to get to talk to you guys when I don't have homeschool, I don't have kids, I don't have time spending with my beautiful wife, I don't have to go remodel a house or wild turkey, look at that, wild turkey running right across the road. That's awesome. And I get this 20 or 30 minutes to actually get some thoughts together. And this morning my thoughts are along the lines of political aim. Along the lines of political aim and why it's important for us to have political aim. And everybody has a political aim. So let's again, this is how my brain works. Let's go down to the basics. Let's go down to the root of all this. What is politics? Because we throw around these terms all the time, this rhetoric of politics and religion, and we throw around words all the time because we understand, or at least think we have an understanding of what we say. We think we know what we mean, and sometimes we don't know what we mean. Or we might know what we mean, but we use the wrong words because we don't know the right word to use because we've been using this word for so long we don't realize that it's not the word that we thought it was. It's not the thing that we thought it was supposed to be. So what is politics? Wes, how do you define politics? That's the question that people will be asking. Well, how do you define politics? Well, I define politics as a social structure. As a social structure that helps society create behaviors that benefit society. In a sense, it is a social structure. It's how my actions should affect others. I think that's probably a better way. It's an understanding that my actions are going to affect others, and how can I discipline myself, or how can I regulate myself to create behaviors that also help others but help myself? How I interact with others, and how I should interact with others. The ought here is, how should we interact around each other? How can we create a system that allows me to be an individual, yet in my individuality actually will create flourishing for the society around me? That's what I think politics actually is. And so I don't believe in anarchy. I don't believe in monarchical, autocratic structures. I believe in a limited government structure like the founders put together. I believe that we should have limited government, and we should have maximal freedoms and limited regulations. So that's what I think of when I think of politics. Now, when we think of politics, we have a plethora of subject matter from which to draw when we look at politics. And what's very interesting, most people probably don't know this, but when the founding fathers put together our system of government, they didn't sit down in a room and go, hey guys, what do you want to do? Hey, I'd like to do this. No, I think we should do this. I like this. I think everyone should do ice cream social every Friday. No. What they actually did was they sat down and said, let's look at the history of governance and see which governance allowed for the maximal individual freedom and the maximal societal flourishing. So they looked at democracy, pure democracy in Greece. We don't want pure democracy. Well, why not? Because pure democracy turns into mob rule, which is what we see a lot of today with cancel culture and social media threats. Somebody does something that's not quote unquote socially accepted anymore, and people go through and they try to burn that person out and burn them to the ground. You stepped over the line, I'm going to scorch the earth. You'll have no land left to go to. No ground left to go to. We're going to burn you out. And so so mob rule is out, because here's the thing. Mob rule can be wrong. Just as laws can be wrong, mobs can be wrong. Because a lot of times mobs just get ginned up to do the thing that they feel is the right thing, and then, oh wait, we probably shouldn't have done that. So mob rule is out. But the structure of electing representatives, like Britain had representatives. Okay, so we like that. So we know some democracy works. So we know there's a parliamentarian system that can work. Okay. So democracy has some benefits. We don't want a monarchy, because even though there's a parliament, the monarchy destroys the parliament. Is basically just acquiescing to whatever the king wants. The king wants to do this, and basically what has to happen is the parliament has to bend itself into a pretzel to make sure that they can do what the king is asking them to do, and then they acquiesce to the king. Okay, so we don't want an autocratic system, a tyrannical dictatorship, or a monarchical system at all. We don't want a king. Okay, so what are our options? Well, pure democracies. Well, that's not good. Well, how about a parliamentary system without a king? It'll have a head, but not a king. And so you start to look at the way they did this was they looked at every possible scenario that they could. And so they looked at the French. They looked at the French Revolution. They looked at Rousseau. Then they looked at the English Enlightenment. They looked at John Locke. And actually, if you read John Locke, that's where they get the idea of life, liberty, and what we call the pursuit of happiness. John Locke called it property. Interesting side note, a lot of historians, at least a lot of historians that I've listened to and I've studied, actually say that one of the reasons why they did not use the word property in the Declaration of Independence is because at that time slaves were considered property and indentured servants were considered property. So if you said in the pursuit or life, liberty, and property, then slavery could have not been abolished, because I could have the number wrong, but I believe there were like 54 members of the, maybe there were 54 signers, and I think 40 of the signers or 50 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, like a majority of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, I believe, I could be wrong, I know that there was a bigger number than you would think. You wouldn't think this number was there, so I could be wrong on the numbers. It's been a while since I've looked at it. But they were abolitionists. And so as they sat down to write this and to discuss this, you couldn't put property in there because property would cement slavery into the bedrock and foundation of America. Now, I know this goes against the 1619 Project, which, if you read the 1619 Project, it starts out with imagine. So it's not a historical piece, it's a historical fiction or a rewriting of history. So just put that in your pipe and smoke it. Meditate on that. That's what I meant to say. I didn't mean, I wasn't telling you, put that in your pipe and smoke it. What I was saying was, think about that. So, what kind of political aim were the founders looking at and trying to, what were they trying to cultivate? What were we trying to do? We were trying to create a government that would be limited, that would elevate the individual, and in the elevation of the individual, that the society would also be elevated. Now this is interesting because growing up, I love Kentucky basketball, and so growing up, I would watch Kentucky basketball, and I always felt like the team was more important. The team was more important than the individual. John Calipari came to town, and he had a player's first philosophy. He says, if we can get each individual to reach their full potential and reach their personal goals, then as a team, we will reach our goals. And I went, that is very much like America. If the individual can be liberated and free to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then as a society, we will all do those things. Now, some people say, well, what about if we want different things? Do you understand how societies work? Do you understand how societies are built on trust? And the West is built on trust. Economies, actually, the reason why we have economies and transactions and capital and money and currencies and all this is trust. It's a very interesting case study on this with eBay. All right, eBay should not have worked. eBay should not have worked at all. People selling junk from their garages and people paying for the junk. What should have happened, this is an observation by Jordan-Peterson, I think it's spot on. What should have happened is people would have sold junk and people wouldn't have paid. People would have tried to get it without paying for it. There used to be brokers originally brokers to make sure that you paid people to make sure that the person selling the thing was selling you the right thing and that the person sending you the money was not trying to cheat you. What happened was people skipped the brokers because it's not advantageous for me. If I want to sell more than one or two things, then I need to be honest and if you buy something, send you the right thing, because it helps me in the long term create a sustainable business. Okay? And if I don't send you the money and I try to cheat you out of it, you're going to let your other friends know, hey, this person doesn't buy anything. So if I want to purchase goods and services, then I'm going to have to hold up to the end of the bargain, the transaction which I agreed to, or else my name's going to get out there as someone who doesn't pay, and I'm a cheapskate, and people won't do business with me, and I won't be able to get goods and services. Therefore, it's beneficial for me to pay what I said I would pay for the transaction, to be honest. And so that's how societies are built. They're built on honesty and trust. Now, what that means is, and I said yesterday that the Bill of Rights is basically a limitation of government that says this: leave us alone and don't take our stuff to the government. See, what you don't realize is, this is how I know that critical race theory, and this is how I know that socialism and capitalism and the progressive movement in America in the last 100 years, the progressive movement, is they don't love the ideal of America. They don't love the idea of America, the ideals that it's founded upon. You know how I know this? Because the notion in America is something that never happened. They put pen to paper something that no one else had done. I believe, this is my own personal opinion, I believe that the Constitution, Declaration of Independence are divinely inspired. Now, there's things in there that may not be great, but I'm saying the essence and the aim of where they were pointing is divinely inspired. And here's why. Because the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, does something no other document, as far as a governing document, ever tried to do. It said, we know that men are corrupt. We know that barbarism is a natural state of man, not civility. And we know, if you look at the horrendous, heinous acts in the world, the majority, and I'm be willing to go out and say 99% of all human tragedies in the world were perpetrated by leadership and government. Government and those in power and those in charge have perpetrated the greatest crimes against humanity, more than an individual could. So, if we can alleviate that from the individual, if we can liberate the individual to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, then, as a society, we will pursue those things. But how do we keep the person with liberty? We limit what government can do to them. These are a negative set of liberties. A negative set of liberties, not a positive set. And this is where I disagree vehemently with the former president, Barack Obama. I heard a lecture of his from, I believe it was Occidental College. It was a law lecture where he said that he thinks negative liberties are very bad because it restricts the government's ability to help the people. Well, I think that is a straw man argument. It does not restrict the government from helping the people. What it does, it restricts the ability that the government has to restrict your liberties and infringe upon your God-given rights. See, listen to that political aim. That you have rights. You have rights about you. There are things about you that you should be able to engage with and you should be able to flow into without the interference of government. You should be able to flow into these things without the interference of government. Why? Because government did not create you. Government did not create the land that you're standing on. That your thoughts should not be controlled by government because the government did not create your consciousness and your mind. So there are things that were given to you by your Creator that if you have these things, if you think and you are a human being, then you have abilities that the government did not give to you. If they did not give to you, they cannot take away. But if you acquiesce to a monarchical system, if you acquiesce to an autocratic system, then the government can take away your thinking and your thoughts. And so the negative rights say, because I exist prior, a prima facie, have an existence above and transcendent to government. Therefore, there are things that government has to be restricted and cannot infringe upon. My freedom of speech, my freedom of thoughts, my freedom to express myself in written form, my freedom to protect myself, the freedom that I don't have to allow the military in my house without just cause, that you cannot search my stuff, you can't take my stuff without just cause, that I am innocent until proven guilty. Now here's how I know the progressive element in America does not believe these things, and it's because, in fact, critical race theory says you are guilty until proven innocent. You are an oppressor until we deem you not an oppressor. Or you are oppressed until we deem you not oppressed. Think about that. That someone can post something and say, #believe her, and then you don't get to prove your innocence because in a court of public opinion you are proven to be guilty. Now, this is not only the progressive element. This is also the element of people on the right. This is human nature. The difference is that a lot of the progressives are trying to put these types of things into law. And it's not good. So what is the political aim? What is your political aim? What are you trying to do? So the ideas coming from the progressive elements and I'm going to say both extremes, because actually what's very interesting is right-wing white nationalism actually is very similar to progressive collectivism. They are very, very similar, but they don't care about America. They care about they simply care about the land that America's on. I think I said that yesterday. And so you can see these elements of so what Barack Obama said, I'm got 5 thoughts going on here. But what Barack Obama actually said was that he believed in positive rights, the things the government has to do for you. Okay? Because when people start throwing the word rights around, they start throwing the words healthcare. They start throwing the words like internet. These are human rights, social media. These are basic human. No. You don't understand. The founders said that the rights that we have were God-given and transcend government, and they transcend your humanity because these things were given to you that cannot be taken away. Positive rights are things the government has to do for you and things that the government gives you. Now, where do we see this? What happens? The government says, okay, you get these. Here's this money. Here's this. I'm going to give you free this and free that and free that. And then what happens is, and this always happens, and the founders knew this. If you give something to someone and they become reliant upon it, you can simply take it away, and then they don't have the ability to do it for themselves, and they have to acquiesce to your position. It's just a law of gravity. If you are given something, it can be taken away. So this happens a lot of times in schools. This happens also in union debates and union what are they called? Arbitrations and things like this. So schools will say, we're going to do this thing. We're going to promote this ideology or this. And the federal government says, oh, if you do that, I will take away your funding and you won't have funding for your school. Now, this has been used on both sides. And do you see the problem with this? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, because I know both sides do this. Or when someone says, I don't agree with what this company's doing, let's boycott the company, let's take it away. Okay, that's you can do that. Those are your dollars. But you see, if someone gives you something, they can take it away. That's not a right. That's not a right. A right is something you have that cannot be taken away from you. Here's the thing. Do you realize that you have to give up the right not to speak freely? The government just can't come and take it from you. The government can't just say, you can't speak. You're like, no, I can speak. I can say this, I can say that. And then you can sue the government, you can take them to court. And there are systems in place to keep our right to speak freely and to criticize the government and to redress our grievances with that's in the Declaration of Independence, is that we get to bring our grievances to the government and they are held responsible. But when we go with positive rights where, everyone needs a phone, everyone needs internet, everyone needs a hospital, everyone needs... These things are not rights. These things are goods and services. Now, you can give those to your citizens, but what will happen is, and you can quote me on this, here's what will happen. If we ever get to the point where we have basic income, where the government's giving us money, what they will say is, your basic income, yeah, we're giving you $2,000 a person per month to live. Oh yeah, well guess what? If you don't get a vaccine, those payments stop. I'm sorry. Like, that'll never happen. It will. It will happen. It's happened many, many, many times. That if the government gives you something, they can take it away. Point in fact, look at the NHS in England. Now, I've got off on tangents here. Okay. Anyway, all right. I want to get back to my main point. That was all tangenty stuff. Again, this is just musings. This is just me thinking extemporaneously and just stream of consciousness stuff. So some of the stuff you're like, I don't know. That's fine. Here's what I wanted to get at. The political aim of the United States is for individuals, and it's the only time in the history of the world that individuals were elevated above government. And I have a neat diagram on this called the Liberty Zone, and I think it's one of the most impressive government systems ever created, and it's just amazing. But here's the thing. The social pressures of today, of people being canceled and not being allowed to express your opinions online, censorship. I don't care how you feel about that. Just listen to this. The political aim of America has never been transcended. There's been no greater political aim given. And here's how I know. The fact that the progressive element that wants to move America in a different direction, that wants to fundamentally transform America, has not given a political aim as high as what the Founding Fathers gave us. Now, you say, well, there are problems with it. Yeah, there's problems with every government. There's problems with everything. Yet, the government that allows us to flourish the most as individuals and societies actually was given to us by the founders. Well, because let's look for a second. Let's just look at the ideas given to us on socialism. Well, socialism is this idea of equity, right? This idea of equity. The equity, that we should have equal outcomes, equity of outcomes. If two people go and they start a restaurant, they should be equally successful. And if they're not, then something's inherently wrong with the system. And so until we have equity, we're going to put government regulations on everybody to make sure everything is equal. Well, that's a fool's errand, and it's also an unfalsifiable claim. Because here's the thing. If my kids are twins and they grow up, as they're growing up, they're not going to have equitable outcomes because they're going to make different choices, and making different choices, they're going to have different outcomes. They have different abilities. They have different IQs. They have different wants and desires and likes. And as they make different choices, different things are going to happen. There can be no equity. And so if anyone says this notion that we are going to have governmental regulations to make sure that we have equity, that's a lie. It's a cheat. they're not serious because it's impossible. It is impossible to have equity of outcome. And so therefore what they're saying is, we're going to have control. You're going to do what we want to do because we're going to make sure that there's equity of outcome. But it can't happen. I'm going to wrap it up with this. I choose to live in an America that has a political aim, that has the political aim that all men are created equal. I'm going to live my life by the tenets of Judeo-Christian values, that I'm going to love God and love my neighbor as myself. This is where I'm really getting to. I'm going to love God as love God, love my neighbor as myself. I'm going to treat all men equally. When I meet them, when I talk to them, and as they interact, I'm going to treat all men equally. I'm going to live by my liberated Bill of Rights that was given to me not by man, but by God, that I have the ability to think, speak, and defend myself. And I am innocent until proven guilty. So I reject any ideology that tries to box me in and say that I am guilty of implicit bias, or that I am guilty of being an oppressor because of the color of my skin, or because I'm a man, or because I'm a Christian. All these privileges that I supposedly have, I reject all of them because I can. Because I am my own person, because I am a sentient, observant being that is made in the image of God, and He alone judges me, not you, and I accept His judgment only, not yours. And I'm going to live my life in pursuant of the American dream, which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we will strive to elevate the individual and elevate society together within that. I believe in free markets. I believe in capitalism. And I will not apologize for those things. I will not apologize. And I will live my life according to that. Even if the rest of the government falls around me. Even if socialism takes control. Even if communism and gulags come in. I will hold those tenets, because those are the greatest tenets. Those are the greatest forms of governance. Those are the greatest disciplines to put into your life, because I have to have forgiveness if I want to receive forgiveness. And so for those of you out there that are upset with me and say whatever about me and how I'm taking this stand, I forgive you. And there's room at my table for you, regardless of any intersectional labels you want to give yourself. But I am going to live in the America that I know and that I love and that the founding fathers gave us. I'm going to live there, come hell or high water. Thanks for listening.